Thank you everybody for coming. This is Emily. Emily works at MidFirst Bank and she is wonderful. And so she's going to help us with all the strategies of financing and helping out with money. So here's Emily.
Great, thank you. Thank you guys for coming today. Now I will say I don't know if this was on purpose, I like that the snacks are green, guys. It was very well put together. I don't know.
It was on purpose.
I figured.
And it was me.
Let's be clear who gets credit with this right now. You guys cracked me up. All right, so like they said, my name is Emily and I work for MidFirst Bank. If you've never seen MidFirst Bank, you must walk into that building with your eyes closed because it's right there. But basically, my job is the coolest one in the bank, I'm not gonna lie, because my whole job at the bank is to go around and have these conversations with people about how to manage finances. Because let's be honest, we talk about literally anything with our friends except money. You know, and it's one of those things that we're convinced like everybody else has figured out. But let me just tell you, that is just so not the case. Like, nobody has this figured out. It's something that everybody stresses about, everybody wonders about, and that's where I come in. Now, specifically what we're talking about today is how money kind of changes when we get into the workplace. Because, let's be real, here's how life kind of works, right? Like, when you were little, you were so excited to have a quarter to like go put in the gumball machine, and that was great, you know. Then you get into high school and maybe you start getting your first job and you had to like re-figure out money. Same thing in college. You have to like re-figure it out, you know what I mean? Well, when you get into the workplace, even if you're pretty good with money right now in college, you know, it's different. You got different stuff to worry about, you know what I mean? And so that's kind of what we're gonna talk about today. There are 4 categories that we're going to touch on today, and I kind of want to see which ones you're most familiar with, so I know where to spend my time. All right. First one is we got to negotiate a salary. All right. Second one, we have to, you know, once we get that job, we're going to get a pay stub that tells us how much we earned, and it's not written in, you know, languages we can understand. You know. Then we have to learn how to budget that first paycheck so that we don't just totally waste it. And then, you know, when it's a full-time benefits eligible job, we're going to start having a retirement conversation. And sometimes that can be a little stressful, especially if you don't know which way to turn. So just curiosity, showing me a 1, 2, 3, or 4. Which one of these do you feel like you know the most about? Like you've maybe had a conversation with someone before, or you've had conversations with your families, or your own experience. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, or 4. What do we have? The most experience. Cool. Which one do you feel the least comfortable about? Okay, so I'm seeing a lot of people comfortable with budgeting, and I see not a lot of comfort in negotiating and retirement. So I think we'll spend the bulk of the time there. Let's just kind of make sure we touch on everything else. So, negotiating salary. There's this saying out there, that you don't get what you deserve, you get what you negotiate. And I love it. Right? Because haven't our parents always told us since day one, hey, life's not fair. Well, guess what? It ain't. You know, it just isn't. And so you don't get what you don't ask for. And I kind of realized this firsthand in my career. You know, I spent the first half of my career, well, I'll just do a good job and I'll just do things I'm supposed to do and like, I'll get noticed, right? And then halfway through, I'm like, oh no, you have to like ask for a raise. You have to like ask for a promotion or it doesn't happen, you know. So, why negotiate? I want to show you some statistics real quick. 3 out of 4 people will accept the very first job offer given to them. Now, to be very clear, there is nothing wrong with that. How many of you have had some kind of job in your life before? All right, and you were happy to have it, right? Exactly. So there's nothing wrong with that. But check this out. 9 out of 10 hiring managers were prepared to give more if asked. Isn't that wild? Isn't that so insane? 9 out of 10 hiring managers were prepared to give more. Now, to be clear, this is not like, all right, you're gonna give me $50,000? Well, listen, bud, you don't get this for less than 6 figures. You know, but that is not a negotiation thing, right? I'm talking about a little bit more, okay? And you gotta think about it from the hiring manager's perspective. Why don't you think people negotiate? Why do people not do this? They're afraid they won't get the job. Right? And hey, you know what? I'll be really honest with you. There are some job climates where that might be true. Absolutely. But you also gotta think about it from the hiring manager's point of view too. It's their whole job to get a qualified person in that role. That is their whole job, and guess what? When they do, they're done with that job, and they can move on. And they're so close, they found you, and you're qualified, and they found you, and they're like, man, this is great, I'm almost done, I just gotta get this person to sign the final paperwork, and this is great. You ask for another $1,000? Okay, whatever, I wanna be done. Just like, okay, fine, good, great, but I still wanna be done. You know what I mean? So you gotta think of their perspective too. I'm not saying there's just endless money out there, but check this out. If you're able to negotiate as an hourly employee, 25 extra cents an hour, 50 cents, $1, making your way up to $1 extra an hour, well, that's $2,000 more a year working full time. You know, that's the other thing. People think, but what's $1,000? What's 25 cents? What's this? What's that? Well, it adds up. Look how obvious it is with salaried workers. All right? So here's two people. They were both offered a $50,000 job. Great. That's wonderful. The average person changes jobs 8 times in their career. Now, that doesn't mean companies. Hey, you might stay at the same company for your whole life, but change positions in it 8 times. Okay? So she changes jobs 8 times, no negotiation each time. This guy gets offered the same $50,000 job, but negotiates $2,000 increase. Now, that's not a lot, right? Not a lot. He also changes jobs 8 times, and each time manages to negotiate a similarly small little bit. Over the course of his lifetime, look, he's going to earn $1.5 million more than this person over here. That's not bad, right? I mean, seriously, for just those little tiny bits. Now, you do have to have stuff to back it up, right? You can't just be like, hey, I need more than you're offering me, right? You do have to have some reason for it. So keys to negotiation, doing your research. You've got to know if what you've been offered is a good deal. That's probably the most important thing. Because honestly, maybe what you were offered is pretty top of the line. And you kind of should be happy with it, you know? But the way to do this, you've got to talk to people. I know salary is an uncomfortable thing to talk about. I get it. But finding those mentors in the field and saying, hey, you know my skills. What kind of job, what kind of salary do you think somebody like me with my skills that I bring to the workplace, what could I be expecting? Or Google it. Oh my gosh, you can, especially if you're going into a field that's like that has a lot of people doing that kind of thing. You could just, what does a veterinary technician make a median salary in Phoenix? Like, it's so easy to figure this kind of stuff out, and it gives you a point of reference. But if you don't do that, you won't know. Maybe you're in a job where there is no negotiation. That could be. You know, when I had my first teaching job, yeah, this was the salary. Like, didn't matter how nicely I asked, that's what it was. There was no negotiation. So you've got to know. You also have to think from their perspective, why should they pay you more? It's not so that you can afford your apartment. I mean, hey, that's the reason we want to, right? But that's not why they care. Well, look, I bring these qualifications to the table, and I believe with my education and similar jobs that have been out there, that, what if we did 52 instead of 50? 52 is closer to what I was hoping for than 50, or something like that. And finally, keeping non-salaried items in mind. Hey, if you get a big fat no, great. Well, I am moving states for this job, so can you give me a relocation expense? Can you do that? One of my things, when I got hired, so MidFirst has their corporate location in Oklahoma. And I said, well, I would really like to be more involved with corporate and kind of meet those people and start, being mentored by them. Could my position maybe include a trip to the corporate office once a year? And yeah. I go to Oklahoma City once a year to see what they're doing out there, and it's been great for my career. So just think of those kinds of things. Confidence. Now, I know a lot of people, this is difficult when it's your first job or even your second job. So I will tell you, this does get easier each job into those 8 career switches that you're probably going to make. You might feel like there's nothing to be confident about in the beginning. Trust me, you've got experience you might not even realize you had, all right? dig deep in your resume. Don't be ashamed. I'll never forget, I was coaching this one student on his resume and his interview. I was doing a mock interview with him, and he was talking all about these things that he did in his job, and I noticed he had this big old thing in his resume that he wasn't talking about. He never once brought up in the interview. He said on his resume, it said that for the past 4 years, he spent every summer at his uncle's cattle ranch in Wyoming, basically maintaining their operations. And I said, what is this? You didn't mention this in the whole interview. He's like, oh, well, I didn't really think it was relevant to what I'm doing, what I'm applying for now. I said, well, tell me what you did on the cattle ranch. And he's like, oh, well, I helped manage the staff. Well, how big was the staff? Well, we had 12 people. Oh, okay. And, I helped manage the budget. Well, how big was the budget? Oh, X thousands of dollars, and this and this and this. Guys, he was practically running the cattle ranch like every summer for the past 4 years. And he didn't think that managerial experience was relevant. I'm like, are you kidding? That's awesome. Are you kidding me? That is amazing. Just because you're not signing up for, VP of cattle development doesn't mean like that's not relevant. So look into your past, right? What have you done that actually is relevant, depending on how you talk about it? Same thing with listening. I talk to so many people who are like, oh, but I just don't know what these people want in this job. I just don't know what they want in a candidate. I bet they told you. You just have to listen. Now, I'd be willing to bet that there's some people that sort of get a little nervous in job interviews, right? Or like at scholarship interviews or anything, you know what I mean? Like, I'm one of them, I'll be honest with you. So what do we do for interviews? We psych ourselves up, right? Look in the mirror, okay, first I'm gonna talk about this. Then I'm gonna talk about this. Well, I'm gonna sideswipe, talk about this, and here, boom, smile, handshake, done. Like we have the script, Be careful of the script. Because sometimes, like for example, when you interview for a position at MidFirst, so our starting position is a teller, right? So what we typically say in our job interviews, we say, hey, one of our most important things is cash handling experience. Anybody ever worked a cash register in a job before? Yeah, okay, so you have cash handling experience, right? That matters to us because we want to see that you have managed money and not taken it before, or not given stuff away by mistake, But then sometimes we'll have a candidate come back and say, okay, well, yeah, I've had cash handling experience, but let me tell you about my volunteer work that I did at the food bank. And they're always like, well, that's important. We want to know about that, but we told you what our number one priority was. I'd like you to highlight that. So listen. Determination, hey, look, you know what? So many times, I feel like people get denied for their first job, they don't get to negotiate, and they get a big fat no, and then so for the other 7 times, they're like, oh, well, now I'm afraid to. Hey, you change job 8 times, you ask 8 times, right? Determination, that's how it works. And then maybe in job 3 or 4, you've got the experience where you can command a little increase. Good for you. And finally, knowledge. Having knowledge about the company you are applying to is so, so crucial. I'll give you an example about the bank, all right? We have some people come into MidFirst, and we will say, hey, why do you want to work here? And they'll say something to the effect of, well, like, you're a bank, right? So I applied for 5 other banks, and like, you're the next one on the street, so thought maybe you'd hire me? Because they all said no, so how about it? Like that, it's not that bad, but like it's pretty bad. Then we get some people who have clearly done their homework. And they're like, well, I like that MidFirst is a privately held bank. I think that's kind of cool. You're not too big, you're not too small. You're kind of a big, small bank, which makes me feel good about, that there's enough positions where I can advance, but it's not so big that I'm just kind of going to get lost as a number. So it's kind of a nice medium-sized company, family-owned. Like I like that. I feel like I'd be a good fit here. Well, okay, but you've done your homework. I feel like I'm much more able to negotiate with you now. Does that make sense? You just want to convince them. The whole thing is based around convincing them why they should give you more money. Now, once you get that first job, you're going to get a paycheck, and it's going to be less than you expected. Anybody else have that big deflated moment when you get that first paycheck and you're like, what? Where did it all go? You know what I mean, right? Yeah. So you're going to have this lovely document called a pay stub that tells you where it all went. The very first thing you're going to see is your gross pay. Now this is like, take your salary, divide it by 12, that's what you made every month, like your gross pay. And that's what everybody always expects to see in their paycheck. But then you have your net pay. And that's the money that actually gets put into your bank account. Because what comes out in between these two? Taxes and all sorts of other deductions, right? So which one of these should you use to actually make your budgets, your gross or your net? Your net, right? Well, people way underestimate their, or overestimate their net. So the very first thing you should be looking at is your federal tax that's taken out. Now, when you signed up for this job and you were filling out all the papers, one of the many papers you signed and filled out was a tax form called a W-4. Anybody remember filling these out before? And here's what always happens with a W-4. Nobody's ever prepared to fill it out, and you're sitting there in the HR office and you're signing all these papers and you're like, oh my gosh, what's this? How do I answer that? And the HR person's like, nope, 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 I'm not a tax professional, I can't tell you, so you better figure it out. And like, so you just check a box. Well, the box that you check determines how much tax is going to be taken out of your paycheck for like the whole year. Now you can change it, but know in advance, okay, I got to talk to my tax person, I got to talk to my family and figure out what I'm going to do with my W-4, because that affects how much tax is taken out. The state wants money too, all right? So you're gonna pay money to the federal government. You're also going to pay money to the state government. Then you're also going to see two other things taken out: Social Security and Medicare. They're different from the other two taxes we talked about. Social Security is what's withheld for retired and disabled worker benefits. And Medicare is kind of the same thing, but it's like the medical version of that. All right? It's like, you know. Now, how you fill out your tax form affects which tax bracket you're going to be in and how much you make for state tax and federal tax. These ones are fairly consistent. Social Security is 6% and a little, like 6.5%-ish. Medicare is 1.5%. It varies a lot, but right now those are where they're kind of hovering around. Other things that you might see taken out of your pay stub, insurance deductions. So if you've got insurance through work and you're like, man, how much am I paying again? How much have I paid for the whole year? Boom, check out your pay stub. It's going to tell you. It's also going to tell you retirement contributions. It's also going to tell you leave time. That's always my favorite when I look at my pay stub. I'm like, all right, how much vacation do I have though? Am I there yet? Do I have my week yet? Okay, boom, I'm going, right? So let's look at an example. So here's our pay stub. Now this is one that's from California, okay? So you see all these things: your name, Social Security, employee ID, and then there's this thing right here. You see FICA everywhere. And you're like, what? Who is FICA? Who's this guy? Like, why does he have all my money? Where is it? Right? FICA stands for the Federal Insurance Contributions Act. It's the legislation that said, hey, the government's going to take out Social Security and Medicare from your paycheck. So when you see that, that's what it means. So like FICA Med Tax, well, that's Medicare. FICA SS Tax, what's that? Social Security, right? And then, you know, okay, so federal tax, this one's from California, so state tax. This person, so here's another acronym, SDI. A lot of people have short-term disability insurance, so that's that. Now, two things here. You're going to see two columns. The current total, so for that pay period, and the year-to-date. Now, those of you who had jobs before, how often did you get paid? Every other week? Weekly? Monthly? Every other week? Okay, that's pretty common. So you'll see the pay period will say, you know, okay, for these 2 weeks, you paid $62 in Social Security. For the whole year, that means you paid $310. Or something like that. A lot of pay stubs now, because people have direct deposit, and they never, anybody have direct deposit? You never see a pay stub, right? Yeah, it just shows up. So a lot of people have their pay stubs online because that's convenient. Do you think when pay stubs are online, people tend to look at them more or less frequently? Less. Oh yeah, less. Because that's another login, and you know, ain't nobody got time for that. That's just too ridiculous. So please look at your pay stub. because you don't want to find out at the end of the year that you've had too much tax withheld. And yeah, it's great you're going to get a big refund, but like, that's money you could have had for yourself for the whole year, right? I love it when, just side note, because taxes are coming up, right? I love it when people get all excited. Like my first big tax refund, I was so excited. I was like, oh, it's like free money. Like I'm getting money from the government, this is great. And then I realized, oh, wait, no, that was my money. Actually, I'm just getting it back. It was really nice of them to give it back to me, right? Yeah.
Hey, why exactly it might sound stupid, but why exactly do you get tax refunds?
Absolutely, great question. That's not stupid at all, okay? Two reasons. You might qualify, depending on how much money you make, okay? So if you have a job, they're going to take taxes out of your paycheck, right? They will take taxes out of your paycheck. They might find out at the end of the year, you know what? This person didn't make enough money for us to tax them at all. So you're gonna get that money back that you paid. Sometimes, like my example, like my first year, I filled out the W-4 wrong. Well, not wrong, but like not to my best advantage, right? So they were taking out, every single paycheck, they were taking out way too many taxes. So at the end of the year, they were like, oh gosh, this Emily Schwartz lady, she's been sending us too much money. Let's send some of that back. You know, she only owes us this instead of this. So I was all excited, like, hey, big refund, but it was money I already paid. So I had to adjust my withholdings next year so I got a more accurate amount taken out of my paycheck. Now that means I got more in my paycheck every month, but I didn't get my huge tax refund. Yeah.
Does it like look better if you put like take more or take less, or is it more like a personal like?
It's a personal thing.
Okay.
Some people do, I'll be honest with you, some people do it on purpose. I mean, I'm not advocating that you do that, but some people do it on purpose because they don't trust themselves with the extra money and they would rather, they kind of use it as like a savings mechanism, you know? They would rather just get the refund. I don't personally do that, but yeah, some people do that, you know? There's nothing bad about it. Yeah. Pay your taxes though, that's the only bad thing. That's what's good. That is not a fun, IRS is not something you want to be on the wrong side of. Yeah.
How can you figure out if you're paying too much?
Yeah,
On the
so
paychecks?
honestly, in the real world, like what a lot of people find is based on their tax refund. Honestly, like that's kind of how I did it too. I got to the end of my first year of my job. Oh man, I'm getting way too much money back. I gotta take a look at this, you know, because I'd rather that happen, right? I'd rather have been paying too much and get a refund than realize I hadn't paid enough the whole year and then you owe money. That's not bad. That's not bad. But you know, I'd rather get a surprise extra $1,000 in April than have to pay a surprise amount of money in April. And truly, that's how tax professionals make their money. You know, you gotta talk to your tax person, talk to your people that you trust to help you with that, and that's why there are tax advisors out there. We mentioned direct deposit, and I want to show, speaking of automatic savings mechanisms, I really want to draw your attention to this because this is something that I do and I didn't realize for the longest time that you could do. I didn't realize you could split your direct deposit. I didn't know that. I thought you just had to pick one bank account. This totally helps me now. So now I have almost all of my money go into my checking account. My work just puts it there. But then I have some of it go right into savings. Why do you think people do that?
So you don't see that money and you don't spend it.
Right. Mm-hmm. As far as I'm concerned, I only made that. I forget about that because I never see it. And that's the best kind of savings, is the ones you don't see. It just kind of goes in there, right? We're going to go quickly through budgeting since that was something that we were very, very comfortable with. The big thing I want to just focus on with budgeting is that when people get a job, they're usually really excited because that means they get money. And everybody always thinks of what they're going to spend that money on. And I just really want to flip your thinking to what are you going to save that money for? You know, spend less than you make. That is the best advice anybody has ever given me. Spend less than you make and make what you're worth. If you can do those two things, you're going to be good. And that's really what all the budgeting's about. Because truly, I mean, they tell you, this is so depressing. Being an adult is depressing, isn't it? Like, I have these high expectations as a child. And then I get here and I'm like, really? Really? Gosh. They tell us we should have 3 to 6 months of living expenses set aside in case of an emergency. Are you kidding me? Like, that's so hard. But it's true. I mean, guys, I have had these things happen. Thankfully, not this one, but I have had both of these things happen. Actually, no, all 3 of these things happened. I had a roommate that swore she'd live with me forever. Say one year, you know what, I'm not going to renew my lease with this apartment. And I'm like scrambling to try to find a new place that I could afford because I couldn't afford it on my own. Medical emergency, it wasn't me, it was my husband. My husband had appendicitis, like all of a sudden. And that's not something that you wake up and like, I'm going to get rid of this, I don't need it. You know what I mean? But like all of a sudden, boom, car accident. So I have insurance, we're supposed to all have insurance, right? A couple years ago, I was stopped at a red light. Not moving my vehicle, right? Guy rear ends me, and he's uninsured, okay? So now I have car insurance, but I've also got a $1,000 deductible. So while my insurance company is trying to sue this guy and get the money from him, guess who's out $1,000 in the meantime, right? If I didn't have that saved up, well, I guess I can't drive to work. You know what I mean? Like, and you don't wake up in the morning and say, let's get rear-ended. In fact, let's find the uninsured driver. Let's make sure he does it, you know? It's just, he tried to get away too, just a side note, he tried to get away too, and he's like, big burly guys, we're like, man, we found him, he's right here. The guy's like, looking, you know what I mean? Like, he's a tiny little guy, like, oh, thank you for helping me out. I'm a worst case scenario person. I'm just gonna be honest, I hate to, this is the downer part of the conversation, but seriously, like, I'm a worst case scenario. So whatever your worst case scenario is, for me, I'll just be honest with you. If I have a spending temptation, like, oh my gosh, there's a sale, or oh my gosh, there's a this, or a this, or a this, mine is, I always think, okay, Emily, if your car were to break down tomorrow, and you needed an $800 fix to your car, could you do it? That's always kind of my thing, because I know 0 things about cars. And I think that's why this works for me, because I know exactly nothing about cars, so this is something to scare me. So whatever your thing is, like, come up with your worst case scenario, so that you have something to play through your mind when you're tempted to spend. So that's just kind of how this works, that you save first, pay your needs next, and spend what's left on your wants. That's basically something about it. Now let's talk about retirement, because honestly, this is where we get the most questions. Saving for retirement is one of those things you're never going to want to do. Let's just be clear about that. So many young people do not save for retirement because they'd so much rather be spending the money on other things. And I get it. I totally get it. But if you're waiting for the day to wake up and say, today's the day I feel like giving up things now to save for my future, ain't never gonna happen. So you might as well just do it now, because you've gotta start somewhere. Most people start saving for retirement when they have a full-time benefits eligible job. You don't have to wait till there, but we'll talk about that. They usually get it coming out of their paycheck. It's usually set up in a 401k. You also hear 403b thrown around. They're kind of the same thing, but if you hear either one of those, just think retirement. A lot of employers will match what you put into your retirement account. It's pretty nice. But vesting rules apply to that, so let's go through what that means. I'll give you my work as an example. All right, so MidFirst Bank will match up to 6% of what I put in. So that means I could put in 6% of my salary, I could automatically have go into retirement. Now remember, that's not something that I do actually, it just happens. 6% comes out of my salary, goes into my 401k. They will match an additional 6%, so it's like I'm putting 12% in. That's in addition to my salary. So that's pretty awesome. And MidFirst is not alone in that. A lot of companies do that now. But if I were to leave the company tomorrow, I could take every penny that I put into my account, I could take it with me. The money that they put in, if I were to leave tomorrow, I could probably take about this much of it. I could take all of this and maybe this much of that. Because I'm not fully vested yet in the company. After 5 years, I will be fully vested. After 5 years and 1 day, if I were to leave the company, I could take all of both piggy banks. So the reason this is important to know is, one, if you've got two separate job offers and one person offers to match and one person doesn't, well, you gotta think about that as like additional money they're giving you, right? That's money you gotta consider. Also, you gotta know when your vesting thing matters. Like, I have seen people who like leave a company in May, and if they had stuck it out till August, they would have got to take $15,000 more with them. And I'm just like, was it that bad? Could you make it work? You know what I mean? Now, you might be in a situation where you don't have a full-time benefits eligible job yet, and that's okay. You can't go to a bank and open up your own 401k. A 401k is something that the company has as part of their benefits package for you, but that doesn't mean that you can't save for retirement. So there's other options. As long as you have earned income, so you have a job where you get a paycheck, you can open up what's called an IRA, individual retirement account. You can do this at pretty much any financial institution, all right? Most banks will do it, all right? In fact, that's where a lot of people start their first IRA is at their bank. Individual retirement account. What that means is you could put, I want to say I'm not a tax person, but I want to say it's $5,500. You could put up to $5,500 in an IRA every year and not pay taxes on that money. Okay. Now, you'll also hear Roth IRA thrown around. You guys heard these terms thrown around before? Okay, and people have very strong opinions about which one you should do, blah, blah, blah. The main difference between the two, this one, you put the money aside and you don't pay taxes on it, you pay the taxes when you retire. This one, you pay the taxes now, but you don't when you retire. So even if you don't remember that, when you hear people talk about IRA and Roth IRA, just know in your head, oh yeah, those are taxed differently, that's what that means. Now, these, I want to make very clear, even though you can do it at a bank, they are not a bank account. So you don't have a debit card for your IRA that you can just like, go spend money on. Those are retirement specific. So that means if you want to try to take that money out before you retire, you're going to have some pretty stiff penalties to do that. That's not to say that people don't save different ways, okay? I know some people who real estate is their thing, and they buy an investment property every couple of years, they rent it out for a profit, that's their retirement plan. Cool, it's a plan. I just don't, my fear is that people will think a 401k is absolutely the only thing I can do for retirement. It's what most people do, but I just want to be really clear, it's not the only path. The only wrong path to retirement is not having any kind of plan at all. Guys, I have seen the statistics. It is not good. I mean, it's something insane. It's like 82% of people don't think they're going to have enough to retire. Like, it's staggering. That's why, starting when you're young, it's just so important. Now again, just putting the money into a 401k is only half the battle. Or just putting it into an IRA is only half the battle. The way people really save is, so first you put the money aside into this container, whatever you're going to call it, but then that money gets invested somewhere, right? So you're probably going to hear some people say, oh, I just keep my 401k in cash. Well, so people like that, they have not invested their money anywhere. They are truly just, maybe they're afraid of the stock market or they're afraid of investing or whatever, but that just means, nope, I've put $1 in my 401k and there's $1 in there. Most people invest it. You'll hear these terms thrown around. Stock market. That's what a lot of people invest in. A stock is a shared ownership in a company. Most people are pretty familiar with what that means. Another word you might hear kicked around is annuity. They're a little more complex. The thing to remember about annuities, it's an insurance thing. All right? So when you hear that, think, oh yeah, that's an insurance product that kind of pays disbursements, kind of like stock does, and that you kind of keep that separate in your head. Bonds. So if you remember back to World War II history and you hear about people, oh come on, buy a war bond, support the war effort, buy a war bond. Well, basically what you're doing with a bond is you're loaning, you become the bank, you're like loaning money to a government or corporation at a fixed interest rate. So if you buy like a US Treasury bond, and you can Google it, you can totally Google like what's the current interest rate on a US Treasury bond? Like I don't know off the top of my head, but you can totally do that. Mutual funds. Heard people talk about investing in mutual funds. So what these are, this is kind of like, if you don't want to do a lot of individual research on stocks, because look, before you invest in a stock, you should totally research it, right? You shouldn't just go like, that sounds good, here's $10,000, right? You want to research it. Well, sometimes that takes a lot of work, right? So if you wanted to invest in 100 stocks, well, that's a lot of work, you don't have time for that. But a mutual fund is kind of like picking out a flower bouquet. It's like a florist putting a bouquet together for you. They're like, oh, let's get a little bit of this, a little bit of this, a little bit of this. And they put this whole investment portfolio together for you and say, okay, now you just have to invest in this one thing. And it's going to give you all these little pieces of other stuff. Does that kind of make sense? And so then you're only researching the one fund instead of all the little pieces. Another way that people invest is they put money in a CD, a certificate of deposit. That one's a little different than the other ones, okay? So if you put money in a mutual fund or the stock market or anything like this, you could make money. A lot of people do, but are you guaranteed to make anything? Are you guaranteed to even not lose anything? No. Yeah, there's no rule that says you won't lose your whole fortune in the stock market. You know. A CD is the only thing up here that is fixed. Like you will guarantee get this interest rate. Knowing that, which of these things do you think typically has the lowest interest rate? A CD, right? Yeah, so that's how it works. So I always just, if you remember one thing about investing, guys, I just want you to remember that there's this risk-reward continuum. That's kind of what we call it, right? The riskier the investment, hey, it could pay off big, right? It could pay off huge, but it could also lose you money. And it's like, well, where am I going to be on that continuum? I always compare it to Crocs, okay? Shoes, right? Who in their right mind 20 years ago would have known that plastic shoes with holes in them would have been a thing, right? And so can you even imagine being an investor, right? And some guy's giving you this pitch, no man, I'm telling you, plastic shoes with holes could be a thing. And you're like, whatever, yeah, no thanks. But then there's like one dude who was like, yeah man, plastic shoes with holes is the future, and I'm gonna put all my money in plastic shoes with holes. This is great. Well, that guy probably has an island somewhere, right? Because he took a big risk, and now his stock probably like is just 100 times bigger, right? But that was a big risk, you know? So when you hear people talk about investing, a lot of them say diversification. What that means is, hey, if I put all my money in McDonald's and tomorrow the whole country decides we don't like cheeseburgers anymore, your whole thing is gone. But if you have some here, some here, some in this, some in this, some in this, some in this, if one thing goes wrong, well, you've got enough in the other things to kind of balance it out. So that's what people talk about when they talk about diversifying. Now, if you do nothing, at work you'll have a default account. So like, I'll be honest, I am in my work's default account. So they know that people aren't, if they do nothing, well, what the heck are we gonna do with these people's money? So if you do nothing, they look at how old you are, they guess when you're going to retire, and they say, all right, so I'm going to put you in this mix of investments. We're going to start you off kind of risky, and then as you get older, we're going to make them safer. Because you think, okay, when you're 22, if you were in a risky investment and lost everything, well, guess what? You still got 40 years to figure it out, right? If you're 62 and you're in super risky investments and you lose everything, guess who's working until they're 87? You know what I mean? So they gradually phase you into less risky investments. I did my research on the default account, and I liked it. I felt good about the things they were investing in. I talked to the person who was managing it. I thought, you know what, I feel good about this. If you don't feel good about it, don't do the default account. Make your own decisions. Okay. The worst thing, though, is if someone were saying, hey, how's your 401k investing? And you're like, I don't know. I'll just figure it out later. And then remember, retirement is not a set it and forget it thing, okay? Hey, if you start saving in your 20s, even in your 30s, that's great. But I'm betting your life's gonna probably change before you retire. So anytime you change jobs or salaries, relook at retirement. That's just a little check mark. Hey, gotta reevaluate. Change retirement goals. Man, I tell you, a lot of people, they think, when they're young, they're like, I don't need a lot of money to retire. I'll just live in a little apartment somewhere. I don't use a lot of money now. It's great, Then as they get older, they're like, yeah, no. I want to travel the world. I want to do stuff. Well, that costs money. As you get older, you want to reevaluate. And anytime your life situation changes, you get married, you have kids, you get divorced, you do whatever, just every time you change your life situation, reevaluate your retirement strategy. Okay. Now the last thing I'm going to show you before we open it up for questions is I just want to show you why we talk about starting young as being so important. Okay. So let's look at these two people, Jessica and Trevor. Jessica got her first job and started putting $2,000 a year into the 401k when she was 22. She did it for 9 years and stopped. Never put in another dollar. Trevor was partying it up in his 20s. Or doing any number of responsible things, but look at that face, come on, Trevor, let's be real. So Trevor, when he's 30, starts, figuring out how to be an adult and puts $10,000 or $2,000 a year. And he puts way more in though, because he does it for way longer. So when they retire, I know, right? Hey, guys, we're all gonna look really super in 40 years, I just promise you. When they retire, Jessica has put $18,000 in, Trevor's put $72,000. Look at these balances. Now guys, they were savvy investors, right? This Jessica man, take her stock picks. But seriously, my point here is not to show you that that's the number you're gonna have, it's to show you if they invested their money the same way, they did the same things. And Jessica was a really good investor, and Trevor's like, well, I did the same things as she did. But look at how much less money he had. Because remember, it's not the amount, it's when you put it in. And when you started making these decisions, and when you started having these conversations, okay? So, it's never one of those things that you want to just kind of put off until later. Now, I will say, retail banking and investment banking are different things. So that means when you walk over to the MidFirst and you say, hey, I'd like to open up a savings account, that's retail banking. Any of the banks that you see driving up, up and down the street up here, like Bank of America, Chase, retail banks, savings accounts, checking accounts, those kinds of things. As soon as you start talking investments, those are different kind of institutions. So you hear things like, you hear TD Ameritrade, you hear Vanguard, you hear those words, those are investment type people. Right? So if you walk up to any teller up here and say, hey, I'd like to talk about the stock market, and they say, yeah, me too. Don't be surprised, right? Because that's not their job. Every place you're in is going to have a benefits professional, it's going to have an HR person who can help point you in a direction of who to talk to at your company. And I really encourage you to do that because you never know what you don't ask. So I brought some things to share with you today. You have a budget worksheet, which I just want to point out has these retirement savings built in. Okay. So as you're starting, as you get that first paycheck and you're thinking, okay, well, what am I gonna? It has emergency fund savings, retirement plan savings, short-term fund savings, right? Just kind of as a reminder of, hey, that's part of being an adult, it's part of having a job. Other thing, I sent you a link to our online course, moneymoments.com/ASU. So if you've got questions about credit, budgeting, banking, anything like that, it's a great place to start because I know sometimes you don't really want to ask a face-to-face question, you just want to go Google it. Well, it's kind of like a supercharged Google. It's right there, all in one place. And finally, if you do have a further question, or maybe you're part of another student group that you think could benefit from this, please stop by the MidFirst, say you've heard Emily speak, and that this is something you want to talk more about, and they'll be able to get you in touch with me, and we can go from there. But, we have a few minutes left right now. Are there any questions that I can help you with now in terms of anything we talked about or didn't talk about, or lingering questions that have been on your mind for a while? It's a lot, right? I mean, I always feel so bad. I just don't want you to ever think that like you're the only person that has questions about this, because truly, guys, this is part of my, I do college workshops, but I also go do like lunch and learns for businesses, and I tell you, I've got 50-year-olds that come up to me and they're like, okay, so credit, what? So retirement, I don't even know. You know what I mean? And it's one of those things that stresses everybody out, so know that you're not alone. Yeah.
I have a bunch of students that sometimes come up to me and say, hey, should I get a credit card right now because I need to develop credit, I need to establish some credit?
So here's the thing with credit cards, guys. I always get asked, the number one question I get asked, well, hey, Emily, when should I get a credit card? You know what? The best time to get a credit card is the earliest that you can use it responsibly. Because it's true. Having a credit card and using it responsibly will build you credit. I mean, if you come into the bank and ask for a $20,000 car loan, I'm going to be like, I don't know you. I don't know. Can you manage $20,000? And I might look at your credit. I'm like, well, how do I know? You've never had a credit card. You've never paid back any loan. I don't want to give you $20,000 because I'm not sure you're going to pay it back to me. Right? So, to be clear, building credit is a good thing. But here's what a lot of people do. They're like, okay, well, I got to build credit. It's a good thing. So, credit card, $30,000 limit, spend on things that I totally don't need, can't pay it off, I'm paying interest for years, I'm in debt for the rest of my life, but I'm building credit. And it's just like, really? So here's how I tell people, look at how you manage your checking account. If you're the kind of person that you never overdraft in your checking account, always know how much is in there, you're really good at tracking your expenses, and like you feel good, you're never stressed about your checking account, you might be a good candidate to start thinking about getting one credit card with a low limit, putting a couple things on it every month, paying it off in full, and starting from there. If you're overdrafting in your checking account all the time, you never know, you're always feeling a little unsure of your money, man, get that first. That's level 1. Right? Credit cards are like 2.0, you know? So you gotta make sure you got a base to build on. But yeah, it's a common question, because people, it's confusing, you know? Good question.
I don't know, it's kind of like vague, but like as far as paying back like student loans, does that only ever, they take a percentage out of your paycheck for student loans, anything like that?
Okay, so, couple things. So student loans are super important to pay back because student loans build credit. A lot of people don't realize that, right? If you make a student loan payment on time, you're building credit. If you don't make a student loan payment on time, you're, getting bad credit, right? Student loans are one of the only loans that you can't discharge, even in bankruptcy. So not to, bankruptcy is a whole other workshop in itself. But just, okay, if you get so badly in debt, you're like, okay, I'm sorry, I throw myself at the mercy of the government, I'm bankrupt, I get it, take my money. They will discharge other debts. Student loans aren't going away. Those are what they are with you forever, right? And that's why people make such a big deal about student loans, okay? So you're in over your head. I mean, the best option is taking out fewer to begin with, right? If you're already stuck, people look at consolidating. They look at consolidating for lower interest rates. They look, but that extends the payment time too, so you gotta be worried about that. They look at, I remember I taught a public school at a Title I school for a couple of years, and they gave me some loan forgiveness. That was part of a loan forgiveness program. That was helpful. I know that's not the only job that does that, right? So you gotta talk to these people. But yeah, student loans are one of those things. You gotta budget, you gotta stay on top of. Anything else? Well, here guys, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna be packing up here, okay? So while I'm doing that, if you have anything specifically you wanna go over, that's fine. Oh, and I have let's see, you asked a question, so you can have You can have a backpack, and then here's some like other backpacks, so like if you're feeling inclined, you can just kind of take these on your way out. I have a few extras. So enjoy.
If you haven't signed in,
You got one?
you can do so before you
Should I
go.
get one? Everybody get one? Get one?
It's,